Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Keto Answers podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Anthony Gustin, and this week joining me is Emily Schromm. Emily is an animal and the only entrepreneur I know crazy enough as me to take on so many projects at once. She's trained as a personal trainer, a nutritional therapy practitioner, and also makes a functional training bag called the EMPACK. She has her own podcast called Meathead Hippie, which I've been on and has been a blast. A loose leaf tea company called Herbal Element, and a new program to help people listen to their body called the Body Awareness Project. In this episode, we chat about how she found paleo and keto and how she times her carbs now, the top things that led her to finally fixing her skin problems, and how she's learned to listen to her body with all the stuff that she's gone through with training and nutrition. So listen in and hope you enjoy. Before we get to the episode, I wanted to chat about our sponsor, Perfect Keto. Perfect Keto is all about making a ketogenic diet healthy and accessible. Whether you're reading all of our online guides or articles or enjoying Perfect Keto's exogenous ketones or any other keto-friendly products, everything you need to make keto work for you is at perfectketo.com. I know what you're thinking. Hey, aren't you the founder of Perfect Keto? Yep, that's right. And all of my insanely high standards have been put into making each and every product. My background as a functional medicine clinician helps me craft the cleanest and healthiest possible products and best information about a ketogenic diet. Head on over to perfectketo.com to learn anything you need to know about the ketogenic diet. And if you've never tried any of our products before, feel free to use the code KETOPODCAST for 20% off your first order. With that being said, let's get into the show. All right, Emily, thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Anthony.
So you are kind of a celebrity, so I feel very honored to have you on.
I don't know, Z-list celebrity?
Yeah, reality TV show star. You've taken a very interesting route in kind of health and fitness, and obviously we have a read in that will help explain some of this, but can you kind of give us a little bit of background on where you started and where you are now?
Oh, Lord. Okay, the fast version. I'm from Missouri. I was going through the whole, in my head, since I was 3 years old, I wanted to be a veterinarian. I just would never change that path because that was what I wanted to do. I went to Mizzou. I was pre-accepted into vet school. Everything was going great. I was working at Starbucks. That was always my side job when I was at school. And I just kind of was starting to have this epiphany of like, wow, I really am unhappy and I'm just going through the motions and everyone seems to enjoy this. And I hate this. I hate Missouri. I feel stuck. I haven't seen anything. I hadn't even been on an airplane before. I had never seen the ocean. So I just started saying yes to everything. I was kind of like, you know what? I'm 19. I can do something with my life. It's my choice. I started went to the ocean, went onto my first plane ride, like all the things that I wanted to do. And in this process, realized there's a lot more in the world. The more you see, the less you know. And I was approached by somebody at Starbucks who ended up being a casting director for a reality TV show, one that I had never watched because my dad was like, we blocked MTV. Like MTV was not allowed in our house. So I had no idea what the real world was. Didn't know what it entailed, but I was on this yes, and I still am like, yes, I'll do it. Whatever gets me out of Missouri. I just don't know what to do with my life. And all of a sudden I was on a real world show, which is a season, and it was in DC. And from that point, I kind of my world just exploded. It was like, wow, there's so much life to have and I can do anything I want and I can create a life that I want to live. And from there, after the show, didn't really know what to do. So I moved to Colorado, just wanted to learn how to snowboard. And through the process of being outside in nature and still kind of unsure what to do with my life, found the gym, and the gym became my home. It was like the first place that I felt structure and control. And I learned about my body and muscles and nutrition. And it just became this, if for most people listening can probably relate, it's just an obsession. And that's when I decided I don't know what I'm going to do with my life, but I know I love this and this lights me up. And if I can help other people find this internal superhero, this inner superhero that they all have, then I feel like I can make a big change for people. And so that's how it started. It took a while to become a trainer and obviously to start my own business. There's a whole bunch of stories in between that, but that's really just kind of the root of how I became so obsessed with nutrition and exercise.
So were you always healthy growing up? It sounds like your parents were very smart having no TV in the house. Did that leak over into pushing you to do different things, or what did that look like?
The TV thing was actually a religious thing. So I grew up, so not necessarily a health thing. But my mom, I will always say this, my mom, every time we had a plate, it was like, that plate's wrong. There's nothing green on it. You have to get color. You need green. So it was always in my head of vegetables. And she played around even at a young age with Zone and Atkins. And I always saw that. And I always was curious about it. So I was exposed to it. I just never really understood it. And so a huge credit to my mom and dad. I mean, I was a soccer player. My mom ran every morning. My dad would have a little, like, he doesn't have it anymore, which drives me crazy, but he used to just bench press when we would watch news at night. And
every day, just repping it out.
Just repping it out. And I was always the tomboy of the family. I'm the youngest. And I just was always the one outside getting, it just was intuitive for me to be active. But that's what was so cool is that, through the process of being a soccer player and then going on Real World, it was like in my head, I was always an athlete. I looked a certain way. I felt a certain way. And I just kind of went to the gym and made things up like, oh, okay, this is what the trainer's doing. So I'm going to do this too. But I never had a plan or a system or a structured program. Therefore, I stopped seeing results and I didn't recognize the body I was in. I felt really weird in it. In my head, I was an athlete, but my body didn't match. And I also, from just some background on me, I had always had gut issues growing up since I can remember, gut pain. Doctors put me on ulcer medicine. I've been on so many supplements and prescriptions to try to fix it. I had horrible acne growing up and nobody connected this with food. And so for me, even though I ate somewhat healthy and I thought I knew what I was doing, eating vegetables, protein, and then whole grains and full fat dairy didn't even exist back then. It was always non-fat dairy or whatever it was. It really took me exploring nutrition. And then when my body changed, like not just, not physically, but like internally, it was mind blowing. I was like, this is seriously what I need to do. People need to know about this because it was life changing.
So when was this timeline? Was this when you were also figuring out your way in the gym that you were exploring nutrition or?
Yeah. So the nutrition started, really kind of quote, eating clean when I was in Colorado for the first time, snowboarding, doing the gym stuff, but it was typical bodybuilder diet. It was still, protein, carb, low fat. And I still, the hangriness was real. I was controlled by food. I was a psycho. I mean, my body changed, but I felt horrible. Like if I didn't eat this way, I knew that everything was going to unravel and my body was going to go back to what it was. So I was seeing results, but I felt terrible. My energy, everything, it was dependent on food. My whole life revolved around food. And so when I first decided to be a trainer, I still was in that mentality. That's what they teach you through NASM and all the certifications. It's the bodybuilder way, multiple meals throughout the day, high protein, whole grain, high dense carbs, and then low fat. And so for me, the first time I experimented with paleo was when I researched CrossFit. And I was, before I was a full-time trainer, I can't believe I'm saying this. So I wasn't able to pay bills. So I washed dogs at this place called You Shampooch. And
it's amazing.
This is so real. So I was washing dogs, and in between dog washing, someone told me, they were like, Emily, I can't even remember who it was. They said, you have to look up CrossFit. And I was like, okay. So I Googled CrossFit. This YouTube video popped up of these girls doing Fran, and after the workout, this girl just starts crying, like falls into this guy's arms and cries. I was like, oh my God, I have to do this right now.
Sign me up.
Sign me up. I Googled all the CrossFits in my area. I found one and went to it that day. I learned kipping pull-ups that day, and I just was hooked. So for me, the exercise piece is what kept me coming. And then they started talking about paleo. I was like, I don't know what this is, but I heard that it would help my skin. And all I cared about was getting rid of my skin issues because I had been on everything for my skin, birth control, all the prescriptions, everything for my face, and nothing had worked. So when I heard that paleo might be good for skin, I got Rob Wolf's book and read it, and that was like the turning point, and everything changed. Of course, skin for me cleared up, but also the digestive issues that I had lived with, and then also this kind of like, wow, I don't have to eat every 3 hours in order to survive. And I feel incredible and I'm getting results. So that's when it kind of hit home. So a little bit of a journey to the nutrition world, but that's like the short version of how I found the way I eat today.
So did you work with anybody to figure out your gut problems, or did you just start doing paleo and figure it out and kind of self-regulate at that point?
I've always been such a detective. I've actually been obsessed with like Nancy Drew. I read in third grade, I read 40 Nancy Drew books. Like I got a record at my school because I was so obsessed with, I also watched Matlock religiously, like Matlock, Nancy Drew. I've just always been somebody that wants to figure it out for myself because I have to. It doesn't matter what somebody tells me until I understand it and the reasons why behind it. So no, it was all self-experimenting. It was really just, gut health to me. All I knew about gut health was that certain foods triggered my gut. And so I didn't quite understand what gut health meant or what the small intestine even was until I became a nutritional therapy practitioner, which was that was a huge door that opened where I was like, oh my gosh, this is what I really love, because it's more of the whys. It's not just a cut out gluten and your stomach will feel better. It's like, well, what is it about gluten? What is it about the epithelial tissue? It's just a whole different rabbit hole that I went in, especially with adrenals. And as a CrossFitter, that was really cool for me. So definitely experimenting, but mostly just researching, learning, constantly going to different schools and online programs to try to figure out the full picture.
So question, have you figured out what type of triggers that happen before to lead to gut issues? And have you noticed that you eat certain foods now and they come back? And as a kind of an attachment to that, did you notice that when you fixed your gut symptoms that your skin issue also cleared up?
Yes. So I'm going to do the long story here because I've thought about this so many times. I have had 8 concussions. I was just an unlucky kid. So I always was outside. I first had my big concussion when I was 4. So I really think that could have been the reason that my gut tissue was already a little bit off. And I started to get triggers to foods that I was eating consistently, which bread, dairy were always big staples. I was obsessed with bread. Like my mom would bring home bread every day for me. And so I know, it wasn't because I wasn't, I don't know how nerdy you want to get, but with my mom, I was the 3rd kid. I was born around Christmas and she went to school. She went to teach right after I was born. And so I wasn't breastfed. I know that was a big trigger for me. Mm-hmm. And then I started to have concussions. And I think that was really kind of all tied in together with what I was basically what my body didn't like. So for me, I know that was a piece, but also, so dairy and gluten always have been big triggers. Dairy, not so much for my stomach, but for my skin, but gluten for my stomach and for my skin. So, or small intestine and skin. So, I think it's all kind of connected. When my gut issues started to heal, obviously my skin issues started to heal. And then the biggest piece that I haven't talked about is just like anxiety, my tendency to have really low lows. Like if I don't eat the way I eat now, I cannot perform because I just want to lay in bed all day. It's like pretty real life. I do not want to function. So all of these kind of tied in like, wow, I feel like I can, go do things and produce things when I eat this way. And so it's not just I eat this way so my skin's better. It's like I eat this way so I can truly be the best Emily I can be.
I've actually gone through pretty much the exact same process that you had. I got issues and skin issues when I was younger as well. Try to eat super healthy, super clean, high carb, high grain, turkey sandwiches with like whole wheat bread and all this different stuff.
Yes,
it never helped. Like whole wheat pasta, like it was doing all the right things that I thought. And then it wasn't until in like all these medications that I was on for acne, which destroy your gut counterintuitively. So then you actually get worse problems after that because of digestion leading to a lot of skin problems. And so it wasn't until I also started going paleo. I was in grad school. I think Rob's book was one of the first that I read as well. But yeah, that was one of those things where as soon as I did that, and even now, if I add in gluten, I will instantly the next like 2 or 3 days, I'll have like not a major amount, but a tiny amount of acne, like clockwork, 2 days later.
Yep.
So, I mean, do you notice those flare ups kind of happen and like, oh, okay, I didn't put it together until later.
Yeah, it's crazy, especially so I have a dairy, I'm like very religious about like, oh, this is why this. So cause and effect, I have to understand it. If my body has something weird, if I feel depressed or more anxious, I like instantly look at, okay, what happened? What did I eat? What supplements did I forget to take? I like need to know the whys. It's never just it is what it is because I have kind of just been on this path for so long. Gluten for me, I get actually like bumps. It's not even acne. It's just bumps on my shoulders and my back and just like weird little skin issues. And then my brain is just, it will not like, I'm all about your perfect keto. If I accidentally have gluten, I just like cannot get my brain to function the way I want. And then the dairy is very much the jawline for my skin. That's when the flare-ups happen with my acne on my skin.
So dairy leads to jawline skin problems for you?
Yes, it does. And I always, people say hormones is where that happens. I think it's the hormones in dairy that trigger a lot of people for whether it's casein or whatever it is. But I do think that the jawline and dairy are really connected.
Yeah, that's very interesting. So yeah, dairy's never been something that has bothered me, but I've seen it countless times with a bunch of patients of mine. And also, like, there's a lot of good things to recognize about elimination and adding it in, but you can actually test for a lot of these things now as well. Like I did a gut test when I finally realized that. So when they do a traditional gut test for like celiac or certain gut problems from a standard clinician, what the order is just 2 of the proteins in wheat and 2 of the proteins that are coded in your body. And so what happens is there's a little bit over 20 of them actually. And so I only have problems with 1, which is tissue transglutaminase 4, which expresses solely in the skin. So when I have gluten or wheat, I don't have any other problems except acne a couple of days later. And so that's important as well. So it affects every system in your body, but certain people can have certain reactions to different parts of the wheat for different reasons, and that can manifest with different symptoms. And so that
what gut test do you use?
I think that's Cyrex RA4, I believe. Yeah, so Cyrex Labs. And so, yeah, and then you can do a similar type of thing for dairy as well to see how you react to it. Not as definitively as that, but yeah, like you said, every system is integrated. And this is one of the things with, the program you went through, any type of functional medicine will integrate those systems and ask how these things are all interrelated and try to have the system work together instead of isolate the things and say, okay, we have to fix the gut problem, then we have to fix the skin problem. Everything's pretty much related. Like a lot of times if you fix one, you can fix the other. And so that's very good. But so you mentioned getting into bodybuilding, then CrossFit, and then nutrition, kind of paleo. Did that ever morph anywhere else, or have you just kind of stuck around that area in nutrition? And have you tested anything else?
So yeah, I've tested everything. I, found paleo, loved it. It was great. It was really fun for me to kind of experience this whole body liberation of, I don't have to count calories. I can eat when I'm hungry, and I can eat a ton of fat. That was like the best thing for me. I had limited it my whole life, so it was just like this whole new world of like, I will suggest gallbladder support potentially if you're jumping in from low fat to high fat. But for me, I, got pretty competitive in CrossFit. I love competing. And so it made so much sense. Why don't I try to compete in CrossFit? And I want to take this really seriously. So this is fairly recent. I had dabbled a little bit in cyclical ketosis, and then, we can talk about that later. But
wait. While you were trying to compete with CrossFit?
Yes.
Right. Let me guess. It didn't work out for you so well.
It didn't work out so well. But it was fun, right? It was fun for me because I was just like, this is just an experiment. All I am, I'm ultimately just a walking experiment. So I dabbled in this, and then I kind of went off of it, and I was like, okay, if I want to take this seriously, I'm not great at CrossFit, but I'm pretty decent. I had hit, it was when it was still top 60 going to regionals. I think I got like 62nd, and I was so heartbroken because that was my goal, was to make regionals. And then the next season they changed it to top 20. So top 20 get to go to regionals. And I knew that top 20 was like, it was a stretch. So for me, I kind of took a break from trying to get to that level. And I just had a ton of fun in Colorado doing like pro competitions. There's a bunch here. There's great athletes. So I always kind of got my fix there, knowing that I wouldn't make it to regionals. And then last year, actually it wasn't the summer before, I was like, you know what would happen if I went all in? And so I hired Matt Chan as a coach, who's a really great CrossFitter. And at that time, and I don't know where he stands now, but he is a huge believer in, kind of the 40-30-30 approach, 40 carb, 30 protein, 30 fat. And 30 fat for me, 30% of your daily calories coming from fat is extremely low. It might seem high, but to me, it was so hard. And I was like, well, if I'm doing this, I'm all in. And oh my God, I was in it for about 4 months, like taking the weekly pictures. And for me, it was like, okay, if my performance increases, that makes sense why I'm doing this. And I got good. I got really good at sprints, but I didn't necessarily see enough changes. And I also, everything in my life at that time, I did decent at one competition, and it was enough for me. I was like, okay, got pretty high up in a pro competition. I don't want to do this anymore. I hate counting my calories. I hate counting my fat like it's gold. Like, I usually eat 30% of my daily calories of fat by breakfast, and that's what I prefer. I prefer to live that way, and I don't want to do this anymore. So then I went back into a little bit more of a ketone approach or ketogenic approach, and I have found what works best for me is higher fat, about 50 to 55% fat, but never true full ketosis because one, my workouts, and two, my stress levels, but also because when I go through these cycles of really low carb, I actually see my body go the opposite way. My muscle definition is lowered. It's even if I time my carbohydrates, if I'm really doing 50 grams of carbs or less, my period goes away, which I think is a huge indicator of health for women. And I also I don't feel good. I don't feel like I can perform the way I want to, and my cravings kind of get out of control. So I have found I work best with being high fat, but not true ketogenic.
So how many carbs are you eating a day then?
So I do
roughly.
my perfect amount is 125.
Okay. And it's still pretty decent amount.
Yeah. 125 grams. If I don't work out, it's a little bit lower. If I do work out, and if I work out a CrossFit workout, then sometimes it goes up to 150. If I go above 150 grams a day, I notice differences in my blood sugar and also some anxiety stuff. And so I try to never go above that. Or if I do go above it, I always consume some sort of exogenous ketones to kind of mitigate it.
So I think this is super important to highlight that ketosis is not for everyone, but it doesn't mean that you need to go the other end and eat only carbohydrates and low fat. So I think one of the most important things is you're very athletic and you obviously do a lot of things regarding fitness. What is your current workout looking like now? Is it a CrossFit style workout, or what type of workout are you looking at?
Yeah, I've had so much fun. I kind of went through this weird phase a couple months ago coming off of CrossFit. If you don't, every time I would go to do a CrossFit workout, and this is partially my fault, I can't not be competitive, even if it's just like a fun class, like let's all do this together. It just triggers me and I want to just go. And so with the things that are on my plate, with my businesses and everything going on, every time I would come home, I could just lay in bed. It was what you talked about on my podcast. I didn't want to check my Instagram. I didn't have any creativity. I couldn't email people. It felt like a burden. And so I had a really hard time adjusting what is my workout program going to look like? I don't want to just go to the gym and do bodybuilding stuff again because that doesn't satisfy what I want. So I actually, and Wade, so Wade is my coworker / best friend, and him and I put together this really great 6 to 12 week conjugate method program of just lifting. So banded bench press, max, dynamic effort, upper body, dynamic effort, lower body, max effort, upper body, max effort, lower body. And so at least 4 times a week, I am lifting very heavy. And then what I do is I combine some sort of conjugate method strength with a 12-minute, 15-minute, maybe Metcon. So I put together, so I worked on bench press today. So let me add push-ups, maybe some dips, similar body parts. It's kind of the whole bodybuilding, like let's stick with the same muscle groups, but then let's get my heart rate up pretty high. So I'll do a run plus dips plus kettlebell swings, and I'll cycle through that. Or I'll do a barbell complex, like the bear plus burpees and then rest. So I just kind of combine CrossFit workouts into it with having that kind of, starting of just strength and having fun with lifting heavy and getting really strong with bands. If I feel good, if my work plate is low, like if I don't have a ton going on, I will always go to a CrossFit gym because I have so much fun there. But I have to know that I'm going there, knowing that the rest of my day potentially could go to shit.
There's a lot to adapt to from a workout like that. It's very intense. And so when people go, like, I don't think CrossFit is bad by any means, but you have to ask yourself, like you said, you're trying to do a lot of different stuff right now. I was the same way. And like you said in your podcast, we got into this as well about how there's only so much you can adapt to in a day-to-day basis. And so if you're trying to do all this work and all this output, or if you're at a job you're stressed out about, or you have financial stress or family stress or whatever, going and being super stressful in a workout is probably not the best idea. Like, you're going to burn out super, super quickly. And so it seems almost like, and this is where I see a lot of stuff too, an inverse correlation where the more activity and the more crazy explosive activity you have, the more carbohydrates you need. And so what I like to hear is just how you felt when you were trying to do competitive CrossFit in cyclical ketogenic diet, which, again, for the record, I don't think that people doing competitive explosive movements like that should be doing a ketogenic diet. I think it's a very bad energy system match. And like you'll probably say, you had a very tough time with that, versus like if you try to do it now with a little bit more carbohydrates, but still not a ton, like the 40, 30, 30. Is there kind of like a graduated symptom that you see that even lower with more explosive leads you to this versus, not as intense with a little bit more is like that? Or how do you feel?
Totally. So too high fat, too low carb, cyclical ketosis, or just ketosis with CrossFit, just total adrenal burnout, like headaches after you work out, or just really not recovering. You might see, obviously higher cortisol is happening in your body when you're stressed, when you're putting yourself through those workouts. So you'll actually see muscle definition decrease. So that was the biggest thing for me. Like, I am working out harder than I've ever worked out in my life, and my shoulders do not look like the way they did when I was not working out this hard. So what's going on? Why is my muscle definition going away? That cortisol it's catabolic. It's breaking down our own muscle in order to create energy. So it's just really interesting to feel this adrenal burnout, which sucked. I think most people have been through it at some point in their life, but it's that heavy weight, the energy. You can't wake up without copious amounts of coffee, which is why caffeine and CrossFit go hand in hand. Right. It's this lifestyle that they live. But what if you took out coffee? How would you wake up in the morning? How would you feel at 2 or 3 in the afternoon? And if you feel depleted and exhausted and you can't get through a workout without chugging a pre-workout, you have some serious issues going on, whether it's adrenals or blood sugar that you have to address, or it's going to backfire. You're going to hit injury. You're going to hit that wall. And so I think a lot of times with CrossFitters, they can almost create these adrenal issues and adrenal patterns by being too low carb. And so I felt that. I felt really fatigued, and I felt like muscle definition was decreasing. But when I went the opposite way, when I went 40, 30, 30, for me, yes, I did better at some sprint workouts. So like Jackie was my best workout that I had done. So, for me, it was like, okay, I'm feeling good with the row. I have a little bit of fat, so I'm not completely depleted in fat. So a little bit of endurance, which is endurance for CrossFit, which I think is funny. But then I can really bust out these thrusters. I have a really high threshold for this anaerobic burn. Like, I didn't have to drop the bar for 50 thrusters in a row. It was no problem for me. I had that glucose available. I felt incredible. But what didn't feel incredible was if I wasn't working out. I felt my day-to-day energy just was so bad. So for me, it's that, okay, if you feel great with that 40, 30, 30 and your workouts are really great, and you also feel like you have that great energy day to day, like you sleep well, you wake up feeling energized, and you're not crashing and you're not depending on food. Maybe it's the mental component for me, but I can't handle thinking about food all day. I don't have time for that. Food is, to me, it's like, it's a necessity. It's fuel. It's delicious. Yes. And I love it, but I don't want to have to think about it all the time in order to, it's so consuming. So that can work for some people, but it still wasn't the sweet spot for me. So right in between, mixing those two has been really wonderful.
So one of the things you mentioned about adrenals and having headaches after workouts and feeling super sluggish, I'm sure you worked with a ton of people that have also had this problem. What has been the biggest takeaways that you've learned that people could apply, either noticing it or intervening in correcting it, whether that's supplementation or lifestyle modification or nutrition?
Yeah. So you know how I asked you, you're the thing that lights you up the most.
Right.
Adrenals are my thing. I love talking about adrenal health for people because especially with women and those teetering with carbohydrates, it sometimes can really backfire. So I think the best place to go is like with adrenals. There's so much out there. The first thing is nothing will change with your adrenals until you control blood sugar. Blood sugar is your pancreas, it's your liver, it's everything working so well together to make sure that we don't have these drops in energy. And when we have those drops in energy, your backup source are your adrenals. And so cortisol is going to be the knight in shining armor to help you feel alive and make sure your body doesn't feel like it's dying or literally die. So it's really this, do we have those drops in energy and why do we have those? Is it too high of sugar? Is it too high of carbohydrate? Is it the stress? Is it your body needing more fat at every meal? So that's my go-to is let's monitor, or let's basically change your macros to where we decrease carbohydrates and increase fats, but also make sure your pancreas has the support it needs. Maybe it needs a little chromium, maybe it needs some B vitamins. I'm just a big believer in also digesting the fat. So a lot of people that have high fat diets, maybe they're not utilizing those fats. So let's look at the digestion of those fats so that you can actually access them and use them for fuel. So that's kind of the first step that I look at. The second step is, okay, if we have that fatigue and you're hitting those headaches, those workout lows, you don't feel energized after your workouts, then we probably need to change your workouts and just slowing them down. Sometimes like for me, when I hit extreme adrenal burnout where my hips were going out of place, like really horrible sciatic pain, I couldn't activate my glutes at all. It was a really big reality check of I have to slow down these metcons. I can't go to this high intensity dark place where you just push through. I became so addicted to that adrenaline rush of I can push through anything, and it was just backfiring. So I just slowed down. I focused just on some strength. So I ended up doing, it was probably a little aggressive, but I ended up doing Small Love, so the squat program, and then I would do just endurance type workouts. So rowing for 15 to 30 minutes or going on a jog, doing some fast sprints, but slowing it down, never hitting that place of extreme burnout. And then I think the other thing that you can go to with adrenal issues is your hydration. And this is just a super simple third step with adrenals and, just a simple quick fix. If you're hitting really low energy, you're waking up fatigued. Really with adrenals and cortisol, if you hit that low cortisol point in your body, you don't hold on to sodium. You lose a hormone called aldosterone, which I know you could talk better about this anyway, Anthony, but you cannot contain sodium in your bloodstream, meaning we're never going to actually be hydrated. So replenishing electrolytes can be also a really great place to go, whether it's salt in your water with lemon, whether it's Noon tablets, whether it's just making sure you're maintaining hydration. So you're not drinking water and just peeing it out. And if you're not hydrated, then we're going to feel like shit, period. So those are kind of three main steps that I go through.
And so in the first step, you mentioned a lot of things as far as checking if somebody has certain nutrients. Is that working with somebody like you, or how would you say that the best way for people to find this stuff out is if they don't have the time or don't want to tinker and learn as much as obsessively as you and I would?
Yeah, totally. So, for the becoming a nutritional therapist, one of the biggest things we go through is this questionnaire. So the first step is signs and symptoms with blood sugar issues. Do you have fatigue? Do you have a drop in energy? Do you, wake up at 3 in the morning consistently? Do you always crave sugar? I kind of talk through those just basic. And if it's like, yes, 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 then I know, okay, it's something going on with pancreas. Most people are B deficient. So I think just in general, a really good B vitamin can be fantastic. I use for people that have hypoglycemic symptoms, like low blood sugar, kind of drops in energy, and you feel better after you eat. You feel more energy, like really chronic cases of hangriness. Hangriness is fun and cute on Instagram, but it's it's a real thing. It's not normal. And so Pro-Glyco SP, I don't know. I'm sure there's tons of B vitamins, but I prefer that one because it actually has some glandulars for adrenal support. And I've seen really great results with those kind of complexes. When I look at digestive support, I look at, are we digesting fats, period? So if you have a higher fat diet, which you probably do if you're listening to this podcast, but you have dry, flaky skin, maybe you have dandruff, maybe you sunburn easily, maybe you just, when this is too much information, but it's true. Your poop can tell you a lot. If you can tell by your poop if you're digesting fat or not. And so if you feel like higher fat diets change your stools in a negative way, you're probably just not assimilating those fats. So how can we help with fat digestion? Well, it's really awesome to incorporate what maybe it's a little bit of gallbladder support, and maybe it's a little bit digestive support, digestive enzymes. And if you notice a substantial change in your stools and even your skin, your moisture levels, how you handle heat, those things can be really good indicators for people without having to go to a practitioner or muscle testing or doing something a little bit more extreme.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think that people think that they would have to do that all the time. But if you've been eating carbohydrates high amount your whole life and then switch immediately to a very high fat diet, your body's going to have a little bit of an adjustment period. And so I think even if you have removal of a gallbladder, which a lot of people switching to a low carb, high fat diet, if they're this was a crazy thing that happened so frequently in the past, not as much so now, but you don't need to take these things forever. And this is kind of like a bridge to get you to a point where your body has a little bit more metabolic flexibility and can kind of transition in and out of these states a little bit more. And so it's not a forever thing.
Yeah. And if it is forever, then we're missing the root cause, right?
Exactly.
So if you're taking gallbladder support, and if you stop taking gallbladder support and you get this pain in your shoulder blade, or all of a sudden your digestion goes to shit, it's literally like, okay, well, next step, liver. Maybe it's liver. Maybe it's phosphatidylcholine. Maybe there's a bigger issue that we're not addressing. And that's when you really need to, supplements never are this quick fix. It's really, I always suggest maybe 60 days at the most, 30 to 60 days. And if after 60 days, your body is still dependent on that supplement, then we're missing the main issue.
Love it. So I'm going to ask you 4 quick questions here. So the big 4 things that I think contribute to health are movement, stress, sleep, and nutrition. And so we already went over your movement, but I'd like to get just a little tip that you'd like to leave people with if they were to make one change in their movement, what you would recommend them to do.
A change. Well,
or one tip, one change, one thing that they would do.
Lift heavy. Lift, under guidance, if possible, find somebody, buy some sessions with a trainer that knows how to lift, or whether it's Olympic lifting is great, but really powerlifting is kind of the go-to. Squat, deadlift, bench press, strict press. If you can have someone teach you maybe 2 or 3 sessions how to move properly with weight and have a spotter, lifting heavy has been the most pivotal thing in my life that I have discovered. And not just physically, but emotionally, internally, what it does for you, I just cannot express enough that everyone should do it. And it's intimidating and it's scary, but I would, night and day, no questions asked, I would never, ever do high rep, low weight in exchange for low weight or high weight, low rep. Right. I think that's just the best route to go when you're trying to change your body, but also just change the way you think about yourself.
Love it. So nutrition, we talked about that you're kind of paleo-ish. You're at about 50% fat, 120 grams carbs or so. What do those foods look like on a day-to-day basis? And then what's one tip for nutrition?
Yeah. So all whole foods. I obviously love protein powder from you, Anthony, Equip post-workout. But for the most part,
she was paid to say that, by the way.
I'm so glad I found you. That random Google search. I love it. I found, usually eggs, 3 eggs, tons of greens, like so many greens for breakfast, and coconut oil or avocado oil. If I'm going to work out soon after I work out or soon after I eat, then I add sweet potatoes or plantain chips. But usually I don't work out till night. And so I try to just stay very high fat for breakfast. And if I don't have time for breakfast, then I do MCT powder in my coffee. I just blend it and I'm out the door. My lunch is, I'm a pitta, so I do a little bit I play around with some Eastern stuff, and Ayurvedic I'm obsessed with. So the concept for me, 10 to 2 is when my biggest meal should be. I feel really good when I have time to digest that bigger meal so I can add more carb and still feel good and not sluggish. I think it might just be myself, but also because the lunch meal that I have, it's bigger, whether it's, gosh, I don't even know. It's usually, I have like 3 places in Denver I'm obsessed with. Just Be Kitchen. There's this ahi poke bowl place that I love. So high protein, a little bit of carb, especially because usually my next thing is a workout, and then really good fats. So avocado, coconut, whatever it is. And then I work out. I have post-workout recovery. And then my dinner is usually grass-fed beef or chicken, tons and tons of veggies. I try to always have half my plate full of veggies. And then depending on when I worked out and how heavy it was, I add or take away some carbs.
What's the tip?
Oh, my tip.
Yeah.
Oh, shit. Sorry. I think, oh God, I don't know. What is my tip? Just stop eating shit.
Yeah,
I think that it's not hard. Don't overthink it. Everyone overthinks it. It's not hard. Once you eat real food, cravings go away. It's amazing. So stop thinking negatively about yourself because you have cravings. They're going to exist if there's a nutritional deficiency. So hydrate appropriately, eat real food, and magic happens.
Love it. That's my one tip always too. What about stress management? How are you approaching that? And you have a million projects going on as well. So what does that look like? And what is your tip there?
This is where supplements are huge for me. I use supplements to help my brain and my body be able to maintain the load that I have on my plate. And then I also just really look at workouts like we talked about, pretty extensively. Like if I know I have a ton going on and coming up, I don't put a ton of pressure on high intensity workouts. I stay away from the CrossFit gym and I do what feels best for my body that day. I honestly don't skip a workout. Even if I just walk on the treadmill or go to the sauna, I have to do movement because that is how I adapt to stress, but it always backfires if I push it too far. So just be smart and trust your body.
Any top supplements that you take for stress adaptation?
Yeah. So for me, outside of just kind of a good multivitamin with some bees and all that, ashwagandha and mushrooms, I'm a big believer in cordyceps and also lion's mane, and then also turmeric, and making sure that I get enough, turmeric and just spices. Honestly, a ton of cumin in my food has always been really helpful for just keeping my brain on fire. Yeah,
I've been incorporating way more mushrooms from Forest Sigmatic, as I think you do as well. But yeah, amazing stuff. Great. Sleep.
So sleep is something I've never had issues with. And if I do have an issue, then something's wrong. So I have to get 8 hours. If I don't get 8 hours, I'm an entrepreneur, but I'm not an entrepreneur that wakes up at 5 a.m. And I wish I could change that, but I just can't. I've talked about chronotypes before. I don't know if you've ever talked about this, but there's these certain types of sleep patterns. And I used to be so negative about myself because I wouldn't wake up feeling alive and refreshed. And now I just understand that my chronotype is a wolf, and a wolf is a night person. And I love working at night. My best times I work are usually even including workouts at nighttime. I love it. And so I tend to not go to bed till 11:30, which is really late. And I try not to do it, but I always have to know if I go to bed that late, I have to make sure I stop planning things in the morning because I'm useless. And so I change my calendar for kind of my own personal need, which I have the luxury of that because I have my own business and I know not everyone does, but understanding chronotypes and how your body naturally works and where you feel the best during the day, it doesn't mean that you're different or that you're wrong. Just because you don't wake up feeling alive and refreshed doesn't mean that something's wrong. It just means that you might do better with changing your workout time. Maybe instead of forcing yourself to wake up at 4 a.m. to work out, maybe try doing it after work and see how you feel. And it might not work, it might, but there's dolphins, there's bears, there's wolves, and then there's lions. And it's a really fun way to I think the book is called The Power of When, and you can kind of experiment with yourself, not just with your circadian rhythm, but where you do best with eating and where you do best with working out, etc.
Interesting. I'll have to find that and put it in the show notes.
Yeah.
Awesome. So find your, was it chronotype? That's your tip.
Chronotype. Find your chronotype and don't be mad. I was so mad at myself for so many years because I wouldn't wake up. I was I definitely woke up. Trust me. Being personal trainer, starting at a global gym, working at Yushi and Pooch, I definitely had to do a couple years of 4 a.m., 5 a.m.s. But when I just hit this wall, I'm like, I can't do this anymore. I feel horrible because I should be able to do this. And I always was dragging until about 9 a.m. And now I know that that's just who I am. That's my wolf chronotype.
Awesome. So you have maybe more projects than me going on right now. Do you just want to briefly overview some of them and dive in on whatever you're most passionate about right now?
Oh shit. Okay. So, so I do 21-day EMFIT challenges, formerly Superhero Challenge, that I run, $21 for 21 days. You can jump in and get a meal plan and daily emails, and I can teach you about food and gut health and all that. Super fun group of people. I love doing them because it's just a great baseline. If you don't know where to start, or if you just want something different, workouts at home, it's perfect. My favorite thing right now is the EMPACK. So I designed a backpack that turns into a weight training bag. You can travel with it. You can fill it up with water in the ocean or your hotel bathtub or just at your house. And you can basically make a workout bag with weight wherever you go. And so it's, obviously selfish reasons. I was traveling. I didn't have weights to lift, so I created it. And so that's been a really fun project. And for 2018, we have two new products coming, all within the realm of helping you work out wherever you go, but also just getting you outside of the gym. I'm a big believer in getting into nature, being barefoot, always getting into sunshine when you can, because that's where we're supposed to be. So creating tools for people to do that. So that's on evolvedmotion.com or the Instagram Evolved Motion, the first product, the EMPACK. And then I have the Body Awareness Project, which is going to be coming out soon. And it's really, kind of what we talked about, Anthony, with skin. That was my biggest issue. So when I first got into the health world, it was because of skin. So how do I take one big topic, skin, acne, skin issues, melasma, all of these things, and how do I teach somebody how to help their skin? And so I'm really, really excited about launching the Body Awareness Project because it's so near and dear to my heart. And it's a way for me to get really nerdy, not just little snack bite informations like the 21-day challenge does, but really dive in full force. And then I guess the tea company, I launched a tea company, Herbal Element. And it's just for me, I love this hippie side. Like I'm such a meathead, but I'm a hippie. So my podcast, Meathead Hippie, but the hippie of Palo Santo. I literally am burning Palo Santo right now. I love herbal medicine. I love plants. And I think that we can get so much from them. So I created teas that I've used personally and for my clients, whether it's for stomach upset or gut healing or anxiety. And I'm really excited about it's just so fun for me because it's what I really love to do. So herbalelement.com.
Never stops. I love it. Yeah. And we recorded for your show as well. So we'll put a link to that, Meathead Hippie. It should be out around the same time. And then links to everything in the show notes for all your projects. Where can people find you if they want to hang out online?
By the way, I feel so spoiled. I've had so much good conversation with you today. So my website, emilyschromm.com, is where you can get links to the strength programs that I run and the challenges and all that. And then it will lead you to the EMPACK, Evolve Motion, all that. But I would say my probably best source of information is my main Instagram, which is just at Emily Schromm, SCHROMM. And you can kind of see all the other Instagrams through that main page.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for coming on. We're probably going to have to run to you for both of our podcasts pretty soon.
Yeah, totally.
Don't burn yourself out too much, and we'll chat soon.
Same. Thanks, Anthony.
Bye-bye. All right, everyone. Thanks for listening to another episode of the Keto Answers podcast. I hope you enjoyed it, but even if you didn't, I would love a review. Just go over to iTunes, wherever you listen to your podcasts, and pop in a review so we can get found by more people, get better guests, and have the information that you need. So please go to iTunes, or wherever you listen to your podcast, and leave us a review. And if you're new to keto, head on over to perfectketo.com/podcast and enter your email for all our top tips and guides on getting started with the ketogenic diet. Thanks, and we'll see you next time.